Welcome to Simply Debbie Sue's Southern Whispers. Step into a world where front porches hold secrets, faith carries folks through the hardest days, and the mountains whisper stories only the heart can hear. I invite you into tender moments, gentle humor, and the kind of Southern warmth that feels just like home. Welcome back, friends. I'm so glad you're here with me today for another story. So let's get right into the introduction. Some stories begin with thunder, others begin with whispers. But in Possum Creek, stories often begin with the sound of Henry the Rooster, a crow so bold it could rattle windows and wake the laziest of sleepers. Folks depended on that crow more than they realized. It was the holler's heartbeat, the signal that morning had arrived and life was moving forward. But one winter morning, when Henry fell silent, the holler felt a stillness, like a missing puzzle piece. What no one knew was Henry's silence would stir up memories, soften hearts, and remind an old man and everyone else that even the weary can rise again. This week's story is called The Rooster Who Wouldn't Crow. Possum Creek was the kind of place where time didn't rush. It meandered, it paused, it lingered like the smell of biscuits cooling on a windowsill. Folks waved from their porches, kids rode bikes down graveled roads, and the mountains stood guard like old friends. And every morning, without fail, Henry crowed. Henry wasn't just a rooster. He was a personality, a presence, a feathered force of nature. He strutted around Mr. Tucker's yard like he owned the deed to the whole holler. Children loved him. Dogs feared him. Adults depended on him. But on this particular morning, the holler woke to a strange quiet. Millie May blinked awake, confused. "Why is it so dark?" she muttered, then realized it wasn't dark. She was just late. Her biscuits burned before she even got them out of the oven. The Jenkins boys missed the bus entirely and had to run down the road, hollering like their heads were on fire. The mailman rolled in late, shaking his head. That rooster's got one job, just one. Meanwhile, old Mr. Tucker stepped out onto his porch, expecting to see Henry perched proudly on the fence rail. Instead, he found him sitting low, feathers drooped, eyes dull. "Well, now," Mr. Tucker said softly, easing himself down beside the rooster, "this ain't like you." Henry didn't cluck, didn't crow, didn't even twitch a feather. Mr. Tucker studied him, concern tugging at his chest. "You know, boy, I've had mornings like this too." Henry blinked slowly, as if listening. Mr. Tucker's voice softened. "After Clara passed, I didn't feel like getting up either." Clara, his wife, his heart, the woman who brought home Henry as a tiny chick in a shoebox. She set the box on the table and said, "Every man needs something to wake him up." She laughed, and he pretended to fuss, but he loved that chick from the start. After she died, Henry became more than a rooster. He became a companion, a reason to step outside, a reminder that life still had rhythm, even when grief tried to steal it. Mr. Tucker reached out and stroked Henry's feathers. "Life gets heavy, son. Even the loudest voices go quiet sometimes. Ain't no shame in it." Henry let out a soft, pitiful chirp. "You rest today if you need to," Mr. Tucker whispered. "But don't forget, the Lord still gives us a reason to rise." Word travels fast in a holler, faster than a creek after a hard rain, and by mid-morning everyone knew Henry hadn't crowed. And if Henry wasn't crowing, something had to be wrong. Mr. Tucker was sitting on his porch, sipping coffee from his chip blue mug, when he heard footsteps crunching up the gravel drive. First came Millie Mae, carried a full covered pan like it was a peace offering. "I brought you some cornbread," she announced. "Figure you might need something warm. Stress will take the appetite right out of a person." "Millie Mae, Henry's the one who's quiet, not me." "Well, I didn't know Rooster's sadness was contagious," she said, brushing past him and setting the pan on the porch rail. Before he could respond, the mailman's truck rattled up the drive. He hopped out, holding a small brown package. "This ain't for you," he said. "It's for Henry. I ordered him some rooster vitamins, overnight shipping." "You ordered vitamins for my rooster?" "Well, somebody had to. The whole holler's schedule depends on that bird." Then came Mrs. Jenkins, flapping up the walkway like a hen in a windstorm. "I brought a blanket," she announced, holding up a crocheted square in bright pink and purple. Roosters get cold too, you know. Ma'am, that's a baby blanket. Well, Henry's my baby. Behind her came Pastor Whitlow, Bible tucked under his arm. Thought I'd stop by, he said gently. Heard Henry's having a hard time. Figured I'd pray over him if that's all right. The Jenkins boys arrived next, breathless. Mr. Tucker, we missed the bus. Mama said to tell you she blames Henry, and Daddy said to tell you he blames the bus driver. By now, half the holler had gathered in the yard. Neighbors, cousins, folks who barely knew Mr. Tucker, but felt compelled to show up anyway. Someone brought soup, someone else brought a quilt, someone suggested a rooster support group. Mr. Tucker stood on the porch, overwhelmed but strangely comforted. Millie Mae patted his arm. We just didn't want you sitting here alone. And that was the moment that softened him, because he realized they weren't just worried about Henry, they were worried about him. We're family here, Pastor Whitlow said. When one of us goes quiet, the rest of us shows up. And they did, all morning long, until Mr. Tucker's porch looked like a church potluck and a rooster revival rolled into one. That night, Mr. Tucker tucked Henry into the coop, whispered a prayer over him, and sat by the wood stove, staring at Clara's rocking chair. He remembered all the mornings Henry's crow had pulled him out of bed when grief tried to keep him there. He prayed he could return the favor. Before dawn the next morning, the world was still dark, still quiet. Then it happened. A crow, a loud one, a legendary one. Henry crowed like he was announcing revival. The sound rolled across the holler, bouncing off the ridge like a holy proclamation. Windows rattled. Dogs barked. The Jenkins boys jumped out of bed so fast they beat the bus to the stop. Millie Mae burned her biscuits again, but this time she laughed. The mailman saluted the sky. Attaboy, Henry. And Mr. Tucker stepped out onto his porch, eyes misty, heart full. There he is, he whispered. I knew you'd get your voice again. Henry strutted across the yard, chest puffed, feathers gleaming in the morning light, a rooster reborn. And deep inside, something rose in Mr. Tucker, too. Hope, strength, a reminder that God wasn't finished with him yet. The holler found its rhythm again, and so did Mr. Tucker. So the reflection of this week's story is there are seasons when our spirits grow tired, when the things we've always done suddenly feel too heavy to carry. Even the dependable ones, the strong ones, the ones others count on, they get weary too. But God doesn't scold us for going quiet. He sits beside us. He comforts us. He reminds us that our worth isn't in our noise, but in our being. And when the time is right, He breathes strength back into us. He restores our voice. He helps us rise again, louder, braver, and more alive than before. I hope you enjoyed that story this week. Come back next week for another one. May these stories that I have written wrap around you like a well-loved quilt. May they remind you that God is near, hope is steady, and joy often comes softly, like a whisper on the southern breeze.